On the economy, specifically inflation and the cost of living, Trump scores even worse. 39% approve, 61% disapprove. And more than 1 in 5 Americans, 21% surveyed, said that they felt furious with the Trump administration's actions since January, the most commonly held feeling among those surveyed. That frustration is spilling into the streets with mass protests yesterday in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and Chicago against Donald Trump's attempted law enforcement takeovers and his expanded immigration crackdowns. All of this comes as new economic numbers show a weakening jobs market and rising prices as Trump's tariffs take hold. Friday's jobs report showed employers added just 22,000 jobs in August. The unemployment rate ticked up to 4.3%. Factories and construction firms shed workers, and the revised data showed the economy actually lost 13,000 jobs in June, the first monthly losses since the COVID-19 pandemic. And those numbers stand out even more against Trump's own promises on the campaign trail.
Starting on day one, we will end inflation and make America affordable again. When I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one. Starting on day one, we will end inflation and make America affordable again.
Joining us now is Basil Smikle, MSNBC political analyst and Columbia University professor, and Brendan Buck, former top communication advisor to Speaker Paul Ryan, and John Boehner. He's also an MSNBC political analyst. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Basil, I want to start with you. Two of the top issues, the economy and, surprisingly, threats to democracy. For as much as the conversation we were having at the time, at the end of 2024, of that threats to democracy were not resonating with voters. What does this poll say to you about that?
Well, the economy we can understand because those job numbers have been really terrible. Inflation has been really significant for not just for most Americans, but certainly we're starting to hear that from farmers, from rural Americans, people who really supported the Trump agenda in one way, but are feeling on the other side of it, particularly with the tariffs. There's an interesting report, I think it was in Times the other day. John Deere, for example, is an incredible, a major company in the U.S. is feeling it on both sides. The tariffs are raising costs on steel, but on the other hand, you have farmers who can't afford to buy their equipment.
I mean, a Deere tractor costs $225,000.
Exactly right. And so when you start to see those ripple effects, you can understand the economy. The threats to democracy are critical because, yes, Democrats talked about that a lot last year. But I think even though a lot of Americans still want something to be done with respect to immigration and border security, I don't know that they signed up for what they're seeing in the streets right now. And that, the sort of ripple effect of that, you know, if we're seeing this now, what else can come down the road, I think is something, a message that Democrats have been pushing that is resonating.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say threats to democracy. Republicans and Democrats say different reasons why they feel like there are threats to democracy. But where there's no ambiguity is the economy. 25% of folks say it's their most important issue, Brendan. And when you look at the tariffs and how Trump is handling trade and tariffs, 22% somewhat disapprove, 45% strongly disapprove because they are looking at the way it's already impacting them. How are you thinking and watching this? And when you're talking to folks, what are they telling you? Because you talk to regular folks just like we do, and the folks we're talking to are really concerned, and they blame Donald Trump. Brendan?
Well, it's the core promise of Donald Trump's campaign, as you said earlier. I mean, we just had an election that basically came down to the cost of living, and we know what the politics are when cost of living isn't looking good. And so he has had 6 months. I think people were giving him some time to to make his case, put his policies in place. And obviously that hasn't turned around. Now I think we're just getting into what's probably going first phase of this, with tariffs starting to actually have an impact and be felt by people. So we know politics can be really lethal on the economy in general, but when you made this your core promise and your policies are having the direct opposite effect that you said they were going to, yeah, people are going to be pretty upset. And I think that's where the sort of middle falls out for Donald Trump, and he can't sort of be saved just by his base.
Do you think this is an administration, a president who would turned course, right? One of the things that even Democrats say President Biden didn't do enough is talk about the economy early on and what they were doing. It seems like Donald Trump hasn't learned any lessons from him.
Well, I don't think Donald Trump will have any problem saying that things are going well, but people ultimately feel things no matter what you're saying. You can talk up the economy a little bit, but ultimately the presidents for decades have learned that there is a limit to how much you can tell people they're doing better when they don't feel that way. So he'll probably try to create his own reality. And I think at some point we have seen that he knows that the tariffs can have bad impacts. He's turned course a few times on them. But at this point, I think some of he has made sort of a long-term bet at this point that this is the policy he's going down. You can't convince him otherwise, and he's just going to have to deal with it and maybe try to change the subject, which he's very good at doing.
And another number that stood out to me in this poll, and I think is maybe counterintuitive to some of the assumptions that I had made of the Democratic electorate so far, which was that while Republicans still prefer an outsider, 6 in 10 Republicans have said that they want a politician who's an outsider. Democrats actually prefer an insider. 3/4 of Democrats say that, even after all of these candidates who have come out on the platform of generational change and being a sort of hard scrabble on the outsider, and that the effectiveness of party leaders in the wake of Democrats' 2024 election loss is what they would prefer, and that independents are also more in line with Democrats. 6 in 10 also want an insider with experience. What is your take on that?
That stood out to me too. And what I interpret it as, we want someone that's not politics as usual, but we still actually need someone to get things done. We actually need someone that is accountable, that is transparent, that understands how the bureaucracy actually works. And the reality is that, with the exception of a few major policy changes in our history, the New Deal, the war on poverty, even the Affordable Care Act, most Americans don't have a tolerance for sweeping policy change in short periods of time. And what we're seeing with the Trump administration is these really dramatic effects, these really dramatic policy changes where people are saying, well, wait, what does that mean? How is that going to affect my life? And he's not actually very good at explaining it outside of bravado. So what I think voters are reacting to is this sense of, take me down a path where you're actually explaining to me and walking me through how my life is going to get better. I don't mind you shaking up the system, but I do at least want to be able to plan for my future. And I think that's what the polling is reacting to.
Yeah, we have brought you on a lot and beat you up about the Democratic Party approval. So, Brendan, I'm going to go to you in this polling. Republicans aren't much better, right? The views and opinions of the Republican Party, 57% unfavorable. Favorable is just 43%. It seems like we focus so much on how unpopular the Democratic Party is, but the Republican Party is right there with them.
Not just lie about Pennsylvania's election. She's led a variety of election conspiracy groups whose erroneous investigations fueled right-wing attacks on voting systems in other states, like Arizona and Georgia. Now it appears that Heather Honey, that same woman, has a brand new job. Yesterday, Democracy Docket was first to report that she has been appointed to be the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Election Integrity. You heard me right. A senior role in Trump's Department of Homeland Security that is supposed to primarily protect our elections from foreign interference, which is an ongoing threat, no matter who is president. Let that soak in for a second. A conspiracy theorist with absolutely zero knowledge of how to actually run elections, aside from spreading completely fabricated lies about the outcome in the past, is currently in charge of helping to oversee our election infrastructure. It's obvious, very obvious, Heather Honey isn't in this job because she has some sort of immaculate record of protecting voting systems against security threats. Obviously not. She's in this job because of her connection to Trump, who used her lies to his advantage and who may now continue to do so in elections to come. In fact, her appointment comes as Trump has gutted the very federal programs designed to protect our elections from interference in the first place, including the DOJ program aimed at combating foreign influence campaigns. Trump also cut roughly 1,000 employees from the nation's top cybersecurity agency and put the director of that agency, Chris Krebs, under federal investigation. All of these questionable moves begin to make better sense when you consider Trump's political reality right now. His approval ratings are completely in the toilet, as we talk about a lot. His major legislative achievement, sort of, I guess, the big ugly bill, is deeply unpopular among Americans for good reason. Even his handling of the economy is hemorrhaging support. According to a new Gallup poll, the number of Americans who believe that the U.S. economy is getting worse now stands at 63%. That's 2/3 of the country who agree on very little. And if you believe you can't win votes honestly and with integrity, and by the way, getting more people to vote for you, which is how you win elections, this is what you do to hold on to power. And there's more. Trump is threatening to ban mail-in voting and the use of voting machines. He's ordering governors and lawmakers in red states to redraw their congressional maps to give Republicans more seats, which Texas right now is very close to delivering on. And even though Democrats in California may be able to counteract Texas with their own revised maps, other red states like Florida, Missouri, Ohio, and Indiana have also pledged to effectively try and rig the game for Trump. Earlier this month, J.D. Vance went to Indianapolis to push Republican lawmakers there to redraw their maps. And today, Trump and Vance met privately with some of those lawmakers in Washington, D.C. According to Politico, Vance spoke to the Indiana Republicans specifically about redistricting, telling them they have an opportunity to fight and support Republicans and be real Republicans.
What if I told you the person in charge of protecting America's election is a conspiracy theorist with zero experience, and her only qualification is loyalty to Donald Trump? Add to that, Trump's approval on the economy has crashed to just 39%. Inflation is hammering families, and now protests are spilling into the streets. This is beyond shocking. Let's break it down. A new poll shows 61% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy. Inflation is climbing, jobs are stalling, and even farmers have once picked Trump are now paying the price of his reckless tariffs. A John Deere tractor costs $225,000, and farmers can't afford them anymore. But the real gut punch. While families are furious about rising prices, Trump just appointed Heather Headley, a woman known only for spreading election lies, to oversee elections integrity inside Homeland Security. Yes, you heard that right. The same person pushing baseless fraud conspiracies is now supposed to protect our votes. At the same time, Trump is cutting cybersecurity staff, cutting programs that defend against foreign election interference, and pushing states to redraw congressional maps in his favor. Why? Because the data shows he is losing ground, even in red states. This is the playbook of someone who knows they can't win fairly. The economy is crumbling. Approval ratings are collapsing. And instead of solutions, Trump is rewriting the rules to clinch to power. So here's the question. Will Americans allow conspiracy theorists and a collapsing economy to define the future of this country? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this is Trump's breaking point or just the beginning of something worse? And don't forget, subscribe if you want the truth behind the headlines, because this fight isn't just about Trump. It's about whether democracy itself survives. Thank you for watching my videos.